What's up everyone, this is Ellis, and today I thought I'd do a little video about percussions, and more specifically, how are we going to get like ear candy in our tracks, also like fills, working with transients, certain grooves, you name it. I just collected everything that you guys asked for and I thought I'd put it into this one video. And the first thing that I want to mention, which might make it easier to kind of understand and get your head around, is about rhythmic subdivisions. Sounds like a massive word, but it's actually pretty simple. So you've got 16th notes, which sound like this. You've got 8th notes, quarter notes, and whole notes. And then you've also got triplets and even like 64th and 32th notes. I think that's what you call them. But these are like different kind of grooves that you can have, and obviously each groove you can combine together. There's certain things like when you're working with like quarter notes, 8th notes and 16th notes, if you've got triplets over the top of that as well, it's just not going to work. Those rhythms just don't work together, and the groove's not going to sound great. So for example, if we're in a triplet kind of rhythm, for example like in the remix I did for Noted or in Feel That Way, the whole track is in triplets and nothing else. And if we're kind of let's dive into a project and see what happens. This is a little kind of groove that I made, which sounds like this. So first of all, the groove is kind of driven by this bass line, which sounds like this. So this is the MIDI. So the first bar is just quarter notes and 8th notes. There's no 16th notes in there. There's a 16th note here. That like offbeat sound, that's a 16th note there. So the feel here is definitely an 8th note groove, and if I'm just chucking in like triplets in one bit and then 16th notes there, and when you merge them all together, it can sound a little bit messy. So as the listener, when you hear this for the first time, that it's a 8th note kind of rhythm. And then with your percussion and with your drums, you kind of want to mimic this as well. So the hi-hats, the kick and the clap are just kind of playing that. You've got the congas, which are they are playing 16th notes, but they're super low in the mix and they're just kind of adding a feel. But your main elements up front and center are pretty simple. So when you're thinking about percussions here, it can help to, if you want them to fit a little bit better in the mix, to kind of follow that groove as well. So let's just go and grab some random drums from Splice and see what we can do. I'm going to use Splice just because everyone probably has it and probably has some sort of access to it. So when I'm listening to it, there's also this little slap here, which I think we can add like a percussion to. So let's just dive in and find some perks. Kind of like that. These Oliver loops are great if you kind of pick out certain sounds in them. So we've got a couple options here to pick from. First of all, we've got this like glass loop. So with this, what I'll do is probably just grab like one of these, or maybe two, because I know that this is a live loop and someone's recorded this in, is that each of these hits are different to each other. So what we can actually do is double track them to make them wide and just get them out of the way of that bass pop, so it's not interfering completely. Pan one left, one right. Maybe delay one a bit. If I solo this as well. Oh, let's actually put it in time. It's actually pretty cool. I think it's ringing out too long, and this is where you really want to make something fit in the mix. So the first step is not to go and add loads of EQ and compression and stuff. The first thing that I usually do is work out how long I want this sample. So I want it really short. I only really want the transient of it. So I'm just shortening it, adding a little fade out. You can hear that there. This is mainly focusing on the kind of ear candy stuff. Let's bounce it out. So now we've got like one percussion hit. And then if you want, you can come in. So let's just make sure there's no low end in there. So that's already a little bit of ear candy. It's nothing crazy. You can also layer it with another sample. So there we've got a lot of top end and kind of click. This one's more thumpy. I definitely don't want the pitch from this. There's also quite a lot of low end in that. See what that sounds like. Yeah, I mean it works. And then we've obviously got that 16th note in there, which we can kind of accent with some kind of percussions here. So let's see what this loop's doing. So I just want to pick certain parts out of this loop, and I do this a lot. I'll find like a really cool loop on Splice or from my own pack or from anywhere, chuck it in and kind of take little parts of it and incorporate it in my own way so that it fits in perfectly with the groove that we've actually got going on. At the minute I'm kind of seeing this bit here as a little transition, tiny little transition into the beat. Right, let's solo the bass on as well and see what's going on. There you go. I don't think we need this extra one per se, unless we move it here. No, we don't need it. And this is the kind of trial and error that you want to be doing if you want to get this to fit perfectly. Don't just chuck a loop in and expect it to fit, because it just won't. Nothing usually fits perfectly with the grooves that you've got. See, that's cool. It's a nice little bit of ear candy, and it also just helps the listener really understand the groove that's going on. So we can also add some fills or some percussions on these eighth notes as well. Maybe that could work. Let's find something that sounds like that. So let's chuck that in. So we know it works, it sounds alright. Let's just help it fit in the mix a little bit better. Maybe use a chorus here to widen it. Now it's kind of feels like it's gone too far in the distance. Let's try a sample delay instead. That's cool. This beat here is really missing something. Let's see what we got. Let's try this. Let's try a different one. There we go. Let's have a listen to what we've got so far. Okay, to kind of signify the end of this 4 bars, I'm definitely going to add a little fill here, just so people know it's the end of that section, I guess. It doesn't have to be super in your face. It can just be a super subtle thing. Another little thing that I like to do is, let's say we just get a drum fill, like any kind of drum fill. Let's first of all listen to what we got. Also, it can help as well, like if you're listening to your tracking, like what needs to go here, if you just tap it out on the table. So let's try that. Something like that with a little triplet thing at the start. I really like the start of that kind of roll. Also like that one, and that one. Alright, let's try and work this in first, and then we can layer it up afterwards. Maybe something like... That's definitely the rhythm that I want. I'm just going to tidy it up. But back to the point that I was on about before, you can use like an enveloper or some sort of transient shaper to really tighten these sounds up and keep them more in the foreground, and keep them more as ear candy. This enveloper tool, all I've done here is I've just reduced the gain of the release, and then I've just turned that up, so we've got no release on the sound basically. Without, with, you can even add another one. That sounds dope. Let's also just see what else we can add. Let's duplicate this, drag this down. Can't really hear that now. What am I trying to do? What I'm trying to do is, let's move this back. And then to make this sound a little bit more realistic, I'm just going to reduce the gain of this snare here. Just sounds less robotic then. So we got this little fill, but I think it kind of gets a little bit lost in the mix. This first roll here is, if we look at like an EQ, it's covering a lot of this area. It sounds like it's covering more of the high end. We can also add in a little bit of a low end sample, because I don't think the bass is playing there as well. So what am I typing in bass? Let's grab, like, let's see what other fills we can steal stuff from. There we go. That little roll in there we can kind of layer with the roll that we have from the snare, to make sure these transients are lining up a little bit cleaner. So that's without, and this is with. Massive beef. Massive beef. Sorry to all the vegetarians out there. I feel like this sound here is really cool, but we can just beef it up again. You can do this with, like, let's just use a kick drum, for example. Let's use this kick drum and just shorten the hell out of it. And then right before this snare here, I just want to add one more kind of low end ish sample. So maybe let's grab a tom. Let's grab an 808 tom. Any 808 tom. Put it in tune. I think that's in tune. And then let's shorten this one up as well, to really get those like super punchy attack, kind of in your face, nice sounding fills. it's all about kind of making things tight and shortening them up, just getting rid of the tails where you really don't need them and when they aren't necessary. So like, for example, here we really don't want this, especially because it has a lot of low frequency to it. We don't want it bleeding over into the bass line or anything like that. Also just going to change this flex mode. I'm also going to take this down an octave, if I can do my maths correctly. Alright, let's try this. Not quite there. I also maybe want to grab one of those glass hits that we used earlier to just incorporate into this fill as well. And then to kind of close this fill off, because you've got all these little minuscule percussions building up to something, you want it to kind of resolve to something, and that something usually is a big clap or a big snare to kind of just close off that section. So let's type in snare. Let's type in snare. Good place to start. Here we go. And with this, because we want it to sound super big, I am actually going to go in and I'm going to compress it or transient shape it one way or another. We don't really want that front end. We just want that big tail to shine through. The big tail. So let's start with using this drum shaper. Just boost the sustain. There we go. Let's maybe chuck in, just for the sake of it, some secret little vocal thing. So this is like a hay sample that I use a lot. This was literally recorded through the MacBook mic, just double tracked, bit of compression, and that's it. There we go. So that's cool. Also, once we have like a fill like this, what we can do, you don't always have to do this, and a lot of the time I don't. It's something that I try is I kind of group them together and maybe add a little bit of bus compression to them to just make them sound a little bit more together. An easy way to do something like this with something that doesn't matter too much is there's a preset in the glue called Full Parallel, and it just glues things together. There we go. That sounds pretty cool, I think. So this is what we've got so far. So yeah, I think that sounds pretty dope. What I'm going to do is just copy this across, so we hear that again. And then here we actually do have a fill. What might sound good here is just a more standard in the box kind of fill. Maybe we can also copy across the hay and the snare. Cool. So that's kind of the gist of the ear candy little fills side of things. One thing I do want to discuss now is creating more interesting percussions that are more like forefront percussions. So if they're like hi-hats or just rhythms that are quite obvious. So for example, when we're going into the B part of this drop now, I'm probably going to add in some hi-hats or some sort of 16th groove loop. And And you can really make them sound more interesting than just dragging a loop in. There's no harm in dragging a loop in, but if you want to spice them up, let me show you how I do that. So far we've got this little glass loop, I think. Yeah. Nothing too crazy. So we've got some hi-hats going on. For the sake of this, I'm going to grab like a clav, however you say it, sample. Just because it's really easy to work with. And I'm going to chuck it in a sampler. Just into a new sample track. I also still haven't updated Logic yet, which is I should probably do that at some point. But let's just put in a groove before we do anything. Tighten it up a bit. Cool, we got something to work with here. First things first is I usually chuck a sidechain on just so we're getting out of the way of that kick drum already. So one thing that I always go to when I've got a kind of loop that I like that's a little bit boring and I want to spice it up is this plugin in Logic called Ring Shifter. And there's some presets on here that I usually automate. So let's just go through some of these and see what we can do. That's weird. Yeah, this is what I usually do. So with this hi-hat shifter plugin, I'm just going to automate in some automation. Cool. Turn that off. Loop it. So I'm just going to add an OTT. Have it poke through a bit. Maybe an enveloper as well. Boost the attack a little bit. And then let's play the whole drums and see where these are sitting in the mix. I think that sounds cool. Cool. I mean, you can do that with any sample. So like, even if you've got a little drum loop, again, so say you drag something in from Splice, whether it's like one of these conga loops, for example, you know, you can make that really short, chuck it in a sampler or whatever, and then start adding weird effects to it and just experiment. I mean, there's no really right or wrong thing to do, as long as it fits in the mix, then it's fine. So finally, let's copy these across from the first half, and this is what we got now. We've added in all the new percussion. Cool. So I mean, already that adds like more of a production value to your song if you're into that kind of sound. And it's really it means that you don't have to start adding loads and loads of random sounds to your track to the point where it starts to sound too busy and too muddy, where you're trying to make it sound like of a higher production value. These kind of tricks are so minimal but add so much depth to a production. And they can really help, and they can really help your production stand out and make them sound more unique to everyone else that's using, you know, splice loops. I mean, we just used splice things there, and we've completely transformed them, you know, and you can do the same. You don't, You don't necessarily have to go out of your way to buy crazy packs and stuff. And one last little thing before I forget it to mention is right here we do have a lot of percussion, mainly because Louis, who's also a Hemi, records a lot of live percussion in. So I have in the past recorded in a lot of live shakers and a lot of kind of live triangles, for example. But I also will literally go into the kitchen and grab a pepper or a salt, and I'll just use that as a shaker, and it works absolutely fine. And then you've got your own percussion to play with. There you go. That is some cheeky little secrets and tips and knowledge about percussion and how you can use it creatively in your own tracks. So I hope it's been helpful to you guys. And as always, let me know down below in the comments or on Instagram or anywhere. If you have any other ideas for videos or anything you want to see, just let me know. And have a really, really good Christmas and a great new year. And then 2021, new music. Sweet.